Hey, this is a video response to Pastor Dowell. He did an interesting video today regarding some of his religious beliefs and how he's talking about how it's paganism and it comes from basically, you know, old school Roman Catholic, you know, leaders of that time and that sort of thing, where they would kind of mix pieces of religion and pieces of paganism. And he mentioned, and one of the things that he made, which was making me want to do this video response, is that he said something along the lines of, it's hard for people to change their mind or belief when it's basically been pounded into you since birth, since before you even knew what it was, and it's just all around you. All of a sudden it must be the truth, and anyone who questions that must be crazy, so it's got to be wrong. I'll believe what the mainstream believes, mainstream religion or whatever. And I thought to myself, why is it so hard for some people to believe that such a massive, disgusting event like 9/11 could have been an inside job? And as a matter of fact, the evidence points more so that it is than it isn't. And even when you show them the most damaging thing, like Building 7 wasn't hit by a plane, allegedly took some damage from the following structures of the two twin towers, but that won't make a building fall straight down. It will make a building maybe fall over, or part of it collapse and tip or something, but it's not going to fall straight down at the same speed as if I dropped a softball or a brick or a rock off the top of the building and then said, on your mark, get set, go, had someone explode the building, every floor, and then I dropped this thing off the side and they both land on the floor at the same time. That's impossible. Scientifically, physics, whatever, it's impossible for that to happen. So that's, to me, like one of the smoking gun items of 9/11. Having said that, that's all I want to say. It's why I found this article, because I thought to myself, why is it so hard for someone to change their mind on this thing that even I believed for 6 years after it happened? 6 years later, or 5 years around that time later, I didn't know any different. I was the same as, you know, mainstream. You're crazy if you think that. I'd see the little videos on the side, recommended video, 9/11, inside job, this and that. Man, come on, get that nonsense out of my face. I got tired of it sitting there knocking on the door, basically. And back then, Google Video, which is video.google.com, was a pretty heavy-duty site. It had a lot of traffic, just like YouTube was. And the nice thing about it at that time, many years ago, was that as soon as you go to video.google.com, it would show you like hottest videos, last 30 days, upcoming videos, most views currently, all these little categories. And what was dominating the charts, every page, the 30-day chart, the daily chart, the weekly chart, the most up-and-coming video, all that stuff was stuff tied to, in one way or another, 9/11 not being the truth, inside job, videos like Zeitgeist, just all kinds of stuff that kind of destroy, you know, religions, the main religions, and how their paganism, you know, pagan dates also, and it's astrological, and they would mix astrology with religion and all this crap. Anyways, all those videos were dominating as soon as you got on that page. So even if you didn't know what it was or looking for it, you're like, wow, why is the rest of the world all of a sudden looking at this stuff and I'm not? I've never heard of this. So you would go click on it to see why you were left out. And then you would get an education, unbelievable, unimaginable, which makes you then say, I want more, this is crazy, this now makes sense now, I can finally put pieces of the puzzle together, holy crap, let me send other people this information. And to dump all that on people, they're just not ready for it. No, that's completely against my belief system in every way, shape, or form. I can't touch it. Thanks, but you're a conspiracy theorist, leave me alone. So, religion, same thing. Why can people refuse to change their mind and question, you know what, maybe the first time I heard of this, the first time I accepted this as the norm, what if that wasn't the truth then? I now have to spend, you know, the past 20 years of my life was a lie. Basically, I'm going to drive, I'm going to try to read this, it's very short. I'll try to read it when I can. But why can't you understand or even just accept that there is a slight possibility, or any possibility, that something in your life, in this case religion, government, politics, banking, finance, dollars, paper money, all that stuff, some of that stuff, let's say, you've been lied to from the very get-go. And the stuff they're teaching you in the books, in the history books, in the schools, is also perpetuating that lie, the same lie. So it just stays, it's pounded in your head when you're young. Your parents explain to you, daddy, mommy has to go to a job to pay for you to stay alive, basically, so we can eat and have a house to live in. Mommy, what's a job? Well, it's when you work for someone else and then they pay you this stuff called money. And with money, I could go buy you toys and buy food and do things and take us out to the park or, you know, amusement park or something. And we trade, you know, money for that service. And you explain to your kid, you know, if they ask, or you just tell them. And then they go into kindergarten and grade school and, you know, high school. And they finally figure all this out by then. You know, they just know because they're a part of the society. They understand how it works now. But that's, to them, well, that's what it is. It's normal. It must be the truth. It must be right. So that's just, it is what it is. So, is it possible that it is what it is actually isn't, and you've been lied to, at least on some of the things, maybe most of the things, as a matter of fact, maybe everything that you thought was one way actually isn't, and you've been lied to. But then you have to look back and say, what about the last 20 years of my life, depending on how old you are, right? Or the last 30, 40, 50 years of my life, I've believed the same thing over and over again. I turn on the news and every now and then they'll talk about it too. I go to schools, my kids, they know it too. There's no way this isn't right. Having said that, the entire world thought the world wasn't round. They thought it was flat for like forever. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. I don't know how far back that goes. Potentially thousands of years. The world's flat, end of discussion. And then all of a sudden, a scientist, right, non-religious folk, makes an absurd claim again. Yeah, the world's not flat. Oh, you're crazy. And then he's able to prove it with mathematics and science. And finally, it goes through that truth goes through those three phases. First, it is ridiculed. Then it is violently opposed. And then it is just accepted as common knowledge. Everybody knows that. The world's round. Everybody knows that, right? So that took an act of God, basically. That took, you know, an amazing feat, but it took amazing evidence to change the people's minds. So you can't expect someone to change their mind that maybe they've been lied to without any evidence whatsoever. So people like Pastor Dowell, myself, a lot of others, we try our best to provide that evidence, and we ask everyone, go look. Here it is. Look at it yourself. Don't take my word for it. You know, go check it out. So, man. So anyways, I want to read this to you, and it made me understand why. Hold on. Jesus Christ. It made me understand why people cannot believe something such as 9/11 being even allowed to happen, partial inside job, full inside job, just no way that happened. And again, same with religion. There's no way my religion's wrong. It's absolutely right. I'm positive. And most people who believe their religion is the right one, it's got to be, I know it is, were born into that religion. You were born a Catholic, you were born a Christian, you're born into Buddhism, or whatever part of the world you live in, that religion, that's what you were, you know, Muslims, that's it. Very, very rarely do people convert from one religion to another. But something must make them change their mind. They must have found some truth, at least that resonated as truth within them, in another religious belief that made them say, you know what, I think mine's wrong. That one sounds more to me like it's legit, I'm going over there. But even that one may not be legit, or what have you. But the point is, they did make the change. They did make the transfer in, you know, an absurd movement on their part. They actually did it and changed their belief. Their whole world was turned upside down for a short while. So, if you look at how many people do that, it's pretty much far and few in between. In other words, people like the people that I have as subscribers, out of the entire 7 billion people on the planet, I've got 2,100 subscribers, and who's to say that all of them are capable of changing their mind that way either? I'm not saying that. I mean, chances are most of them can't. But the fact that people subscribe to what I have to say already tells me they know something's not right in the world quite like they've been told, and they're searching for something, and maybe things that I say and others like me say is resonating with them as, hey, this at least makes more sense than what I've been believing, or what I thought I believed, or what I thought was the truth. So I think I'm gonna, you know, at least listen to this guy. And then I may say something that's totally different on another belief of yours that you don't like, and then all of a sudden you may unsubscribe from me. I don't like him anymore. Or who knows what. So it's just the way people work. The thing is that the proof has to be there, the evidence has to be there. But the point of this video, which I'm kind of procrastinating because I'm driving right now, and I'm about to pull in to where I can stop for a quick second and read this to you, because I'm going to pick up a pizza. My dad's at the house. Again, my father, he's on the same page as me. It's fantastic to have family on the same page, which is usually not how it goes. My wife is also on the same page as me. So, again, that's another nice thing to have, you know, to relate to. Otherwise, it would be me by myself, feeling like, you know, to me against the world, and then I have my YouTube friends and subscribers and that kind of thing that are on the same page as me, so at least I feel good about that, you know. But trust me, that's nice, but having your family, father and mother, or not my mother, my father, my wife, that's fantastic. Let me just pull in here real quick to read this to you. Why can't people change their minds on something and accept that, you know what, the whole story that was been told to us as a society, including myself when I was born till now, maybe that was a lie? Why can't people do that? Here's why. How does brainwashing work? Like this. The most important time you learn about something is the first time. Since you know nothing about it before you hear anything, you have no opinion. What you hear about, or when you hear about it the first time, it becomes the matrix, or the template, if you will, for that subject in your mind. Okay? From then on, you will compare everything you learn about that subject to the matrix, right? The core, the template. You will compare everything about that subject to that matrix. If something you hear contradicts the matrix, you will think it must be wrong automatically. This is a fact. This is how the brain works. You do something akin to that every day. When you hear something new, you compare it to what you already know, or at least what you thought you know. If the new thing you hear contradicts what you already know, you will probably conclude it is wrong. You reject it. You do that whenever you read one of my pieces or listen to me on the radio. This is the guy who wrote this saying this. You do this every day when you read one of my pieces or listen to me on the radio. But what if the matrix, the first time you heard it, was wrong? What if the first thing you hear about that particular subject is actually wrong? How would you establish that? It would take a heroic effort, a mental surgery, to change your thinking, simply because that's how the human mind operates, and that's what these elitists and these people at the top know. That's why they want to brainwash it into you at a young age, indoctrinate you into their schools, into their history books, etc. So indeed, suppose the first time you hear about something you are 6 years old. Suppose you hear about that same thing for 12 years, or even 16 years, possibly hours per day, or multiple times per day at least. Suppose you never hear anything else about it. And then suppose what you had heard every day all those years is now reinforced every day by the media. What would you think if after all that you finally hear something different? You would absolutely, positively reject it, no matter what. You would call it stupid, wrong, bizarre, crazy, it's extreme, etc. That's because that's the way the human mind works. And if you want to change the way people think about something that you don't want them knowing about, or you want them to believe something different than what is really there, you got to figure out how to manipulate their mind. Well, how do you manipulate their mind? Let's make sure they believe this lie first. Because if they believe it as a child growing up, and their parents tell them it's the truth, and everyone around them tells them it's the truth. Their children's friends, your child's friend, tells them it's the truth because they all know it too, and their parents are doing the same thing. They're reading the same books, right? They're in the same religion, right? Then automatically it's the truth. There's no way that they'll ever change their mind. It takes an act of God, basically, to change your mind and to change your thinking that maybe you've been lied to. So that is my response to Pastor Dowell's video, and that probably, more than probably, explains why people have such a hard time believing a lot of the things he says, even though he backs it up with a lot of factual evidence that people can go and look and research themselves. But people would rather bash him and other people like me and others for simply challenging the normal belief, even though we do provide proof that, hey, there's something major wrong here, go take a look. And people will usually not even, once they take a peek at it, I'm not looking, I don't believe it. We don't need to know that. When I had the Jehovah's Witnesses come to my house and I invited them inside, come on in guys, let's have a discussion. They were glad to tell me all about their religion, but when it was my turn to talk to them and ask them questions and why theirs is the right religion and what about this, what about that, right, ask them all kinds of questions that they really didn't have answers to, their simple answer was, well, our book, our Bible tells us the truth and our religion, and that's, we know that to be the truth. Yeah, but what the hell kind of answer is that to my question? And they would like say that over and over again, basically, like, well, they couldn't give you an answer. But that's not to bash on Jehovah's Witnesses, because other religions do the same thing when they don't have an answer. They just kind of bypass it, give you some nonsense answer, and that's it. And you're left like, oh, okay, thanks. Well, that didn't make any sense. So, anyways, I gotta go get this pizza, and I hope you take what I just read you and put that in your mind and think about that, because that's a very powerful couple paragraphs of information as to why people cannot and refuse to change their mind. I've got a friend that like I mentioned this before, nothing I've taught, 9/11, nothing, governments don't do that, it's impossible, it's never been done before, they didn't do it now, they won't do it in the future, these wars are legitimate, everything's legitimate, there's no economic collapse, everything's fine, etc. And I can just pound them with evidence of all kinds of things. Dude, don't tell me this is normal. Housing collapsed even more. Housing collapsing even more. No recovery. Now there's a double bailout for Greece. No, everything's fine, everything's fine. It's just something in his belief system that refuses to let his mind take that step into saying, you know what, maybe I was wrong. Maybe what I've been told was wrong. But at that point, because you've been wronged your whole life and you've bought this lie your whole life, it's almost too embarrassing or too affects your ego too greatly for you to even consider changing it. So you just stick with the lie, put on the blinders, and the discussion. Leave me alone. Have a nice day.